Mr. Adomenas, thank you very much for joining us. My first question is going to about this report about death of an Iraqi immigrant on your borders. Can you confirm this report?
Unfortunately, no. We cannot confirm this unfortunate incident because from our side, our border guards were guarding the border. They were refusing entry to a number of groups of migrants, but no violent incidents took place. So we have only the report of Belarusian authorities, which are more often than not fake.
Okay, but so have you as Lithuania ordered your border security to use force against the immigrants?
We only use all means not to allow people enter the Lithuania. So no lethal force is used and no violence is used.
What is the limit of these means to use to stop people from entering your country?
Well, sort of turning them around and showing them where Belarus is.
So my question was, what is your limit while you use force to stop the immigrants into your country?
It involves stopping them forcefully and apprehending, leading to the dividing line, and that's it.
Okay. The Red Cross warned on Wednesday that Lithuania's decision to turn away immigrants attempting to cross their border does not comply with the international law. What's your comment on this?
We analyzed the international legal situation and the precedent in Spanish Ceuta and Melilla. And the only way of getting into Lithuanian territory is through legitimate border control posts. And all refugees and people seeking asylum should apply to border control posts and not try to enter Lithuanian territory illegally. This is very clearly in the Lithuanian law. It constitutes a crime under the Lithuanian law, and we have the duty to guard the external border of the European Union. So prohibiting the entry is totally within the law, and Red Cross should not spread this information.
Okay. Do you have any number, like how many asylum seekers are there on your border?
We have only estimates because we don't have the information on from Belarus. They're trying to bring as many people from all over the world as they can, and they're using this as a weaponized sort of migration flows in order to put pressure on the Lithuanian government. So this is not a usual kind of migration situation. This is Belarus regime is trying to push those people into Lithuania in order to increase pressure on our government. And so poor people who are seeking economic migration are becoming instruments in the hands of this criminal regime. We have estimates that maybe thousands of migrants are somewhere in Belarusian cities, Minsk and others closer to the border, are waiting until they're going to be conducted by Belarusian border guards and special forces on the border, because the involvement of special forces and official structures of Belarusian regime is very documented. This is not spontaneous migration. This is organized migration flows, condoned, organized, and conducted by the Belarusian regime. And as such, it is a crime.
I see.
So I would suggest to people of Iraq not to participate in the crime.
I see. You blame on Belarus to organize this sort of immigration, and you call it an organized immigration, not a random one. What do you think the motivation behind this would be for Belarus to organize such an immigration flow to your country?
It is a revenge for EU sanctions, which were applied to Belarus after numerous human rights violations and after stolen elections. There are currently 600 political prisoners, and tens of thousands have been beaten, arrested, and repressed in various ways. So EU introduced sanctions, and Lukashenko, dictator of Belarus, immediately declared that he's going to flood EU with migrants. And Lithuania, having the longest EU border with Belarus, it was the obvious target. And so this is a political attempt to put pressure on the government and make EU step down on sanctions, which are hurting Lukashenko's regime. And poor migrants have caught in the crossfire of this political attempt.
I see. But what you say, what you tell me is, in this case, the case is totally related with the EU, not only with your country. Do you get the enough support you ask for from the EU member countries to face this dilemma?
Certainly, the EU assistance started coming as soon as we requested it. So we have assistance to build the camps, because that was a main challenge, where to house the migrants. Of course, we're not going to let them go free. They are being apprehended, and until they hear the verdict of courts for their asylum applications, which turn out to be negative in most cases. So in a sense, for comparison, in the last year, in 2020, we had 74 illegal border crossings from Belarus. Now we have more than 4,000 in just half a year, and most of them came in the last month. So obviously we didn't have facilities where to house these people. So now they are housed in tents, and not in very good conditions, I'm afraid. But EU is providing us with assistance to build these new tent camps, which we have to build as fast as people coming in. And also EU has provided us with border guards, with surveillance technologies to protect the border, and other kinds of helps are also coming in.
So you tell me you have enough international support?
Well, the best international support would be to make Lukashenko regime to stop this criminal migration flow. That would be sort of the best support, and we're thinking about new sanctions against the regime in a sort of response to this hybrid attack on Lithuania. Of course, it takes time.
Do you expect any step back from EU after this, let's call it, force from Belarus?
No, I think that EU has very clearly understood that we're dealing here with a rogue state, which is not above violation of international law. And I don't mean only illegal migration and using human beings as a sort of political instrument, but also hijacking of the Ryanair flight from Athens to Vilnius in May in order to kidnap a journalist who was against the regime. So this is a total violation of civil aviation rules and international norms, and it was in response to this heinous crime that actually the most stringent sanctions were adopted. And I think it's now that this weekend we're going to near the anniversary of stolen election, I think EU as clearly as ever understands that we have to be very resolute and continue with pushing the regime to step down and release political prisoners and have free and fair elections.
Is it only Belarus using migrants or asylum seekers as a weapon, as you mentioned, against EU countries, or are there any other countries supporting Belarus in this process?
Let's put it this way. The playbook is the Russian one. It was used in 2015 when suddenly thousands of migrants appeared at the Finnish and Norwegian borders. in order to get these two countries to step down in their sort of stance vis-a-vis Russia and to ask them sort of for dialogue with Putin. And they succeeded. So this was the first instance of kind of politically used migration. So we think it's the same playbook. We have clear signs. As to the actual involvement of Russia directly, the evidence has yet to be investigated.
And you tell me in 2015, Russia was successful to achieve what he wanted, or it wanted to achieve. Do you think this time again that success is going to be for the Belarusian side?
I'm very confident that it's not going to be. That there is a great concern.
What have changed from 2015
highest
up to
levels
today
among the sort of all states? I think what has changed is we realize that it's no use negotiating with terrorists because it only gives them more weapons against us. So to stay the course is extremely important in order to preserve our ability to act strategically and resolutely.
I see. Okay, can you tell me in details what sort of problems exactly the migrants on your border create for your country?
Well, first of all, the illegal crossing of the border is a crime. So we have to prevent it. This is our obligation. We have to guard the external borders of the EU. So that requires a lot of human effort. We have deployed army units alongside with border guards. There is a police units which have to be guarding the migrants. So of course, that detracts from the police efforts in other parts of the country. So that's one drain on our resources. Then we have to house the migrants and to feed them, of course. So in a sense, that's the main problem. We have to process their asylum applications, and when we used to have several tens of migrants, and now we have thousands. Again, we need to employ many more people in our migration department and other services that process them. And then, of course, it's a problem of what to do with them next, because they are going to be enclosed in the migrants' camps until they go back. There is no way for them into Western Europe. There is no route open, and we're guarding the internal border with Poland. So, in a sense, this is dead end. And people who sold them this trip to Lithuania, to Minsk, as a sort of easy way into the EU, they really deceived them. And people paid sometimes considerable sums of money, sometimes 10 or 15,000 euros for nothing, because they're not going to get into Germany or Sweden or other countries. They're just going to be there during very miserable Lithuanian winter. So I'm really sort of have some great sympathy for them, but they shouldn't attempt that. Others should not try that.
I see. And are most of the migrants coming from Iraq, or are there any other nationalities?
Let's put it this way. Out of 4,000 migrants that we have now, 2,800 are Iraqi citizens.
And what is the destiny of those people, 2,700 Iraqis, which are right now in your country?
Most of them have applied for asylum, but there is no genuine case for asylum because they do not come from a war country, and the immediate country from which they enter, they do not suffer a violation of their rights. Only Belarusians suffer violations of their rights in Belarus. So there is no genuine case for them to get asylum. So when it's going to be processed, the asylum applications, and I'm confident that absolute majority will be rejected, then they will face either criminal proceedings, because when refugee asylum case is finished, then the possibility to persecute legally returns, or they will have to return back to Iraq. certainly there will be no way for them to go further into Western Europe.
Okay, but their life circumstances right now, according to the reports we get from the asylum seekers in your country, is very bad. Some of them are asking to come back to Iraq. They are not allowed, or to move to any other European country. You told me that it's not an option for them. What would your government do to help these people with a better life circumstances until their asylum seeking applications are completed?
If they want to return to Iraq voluntarily, of course, we'll provide them with the possibility, with tickets and all that. I try to explain that actually this is a totally new challenge for us. So we don't have where to house them. They're housed in very sort of poor circumstances, not because we intentionally want to harm them, but because we simply have no premises where to put thousands of people who suddenly came into our country. So they unfortunately will, for the time being, unless they want to voluntarily return back to their country, they will have to live in rather worse conditions than they were used to in their native country.
I see. And your foreign minister was in Iraq almost 1 month ago. Did he make any agreement with the Iraqi authorities in regard with this refugee crisis?
We started a dialogue. I was also part of this delegation, and we've met with very constructive response. But of course, legal agreements do take time, and I very much hope that seeing the plight of these thousands of your citizens, Iraq authorities will be very forthcoming and cooperative in making such agreement, which would allow us to facilitate the return and regulation of such flights. But first and foremost, I would like to simply issue a word of warning not to become an instrument of a regime, Belarusian regime, which is totally disregarding the value of human life. It behaves atrociously towards its own citizens, and it uses migrants as simply sort of a weapon. So really, in order to stay safe, better not to travel to Belarus. There is no easy way into the EU.
Mm-hmm. And do you expect any other refugee crisis because of the current influx?
Well, what we would like to avoid is creation of a new path, new route into the EU, such as there exists one across Mediterranean or in Gibraltar Straits. So it's important that we close down the border. And we already started efforts of bolstering the physical barrier with barbed wire and other means to create a really physical barrier. So I expect that it's only a matter of time until this route is closed. And also the experience of people who have traveled there shows that this is not an easy way. So when it gets back to their sort of acquaintances and contacts, the message should be, that's not the way to travel to Europe. The best way is to seek legal entry.
I see. You told me that you have asked support from the EU and you have it. How about NATO? Have you contacted NATO for support to protect your borders?
Well, NATO is dealing with military threats. So while we have NATO presence and our NATO partners are viewing the situation with concern and also great attention, at the moment there is no military situation which needs NATO intervention as such. If, on the other hand, the Belarusian regime tries to escalate it, then of course we will address our NATO partners for assistance.
Okay. From one of your answers for the previous questions, you told me, I asked you what has changed since 2015. You told me we have learned that we should not give the terrorists what they want. who do you exactly mean with the word terrorist?
In this instance, is the regime of Alexander Lukashenko, the illegitimate regime who stole the elections almost exactly a year ago and continues to repress his people. It's the country standing for Belarusians, not for visitors from outside, but it's turning into a sort of North Korea without any freedom of speech, freedom of manifestations or political activities. It is becoming more and more oppressive. So this is the regime that hijacks planes and pushes people across the border.
Okay, my final question is going to be about, this is going to be a question by the families and friends of the asylum seekers inside your country. They are now listening to you. What would you tell them, the families and the friends of those people in your country?
Well, first of all, do not attempt this. You are not going to get into Western Europe. And secondly, if your relatives and friends find themselves in bad circumstances in Lithuania, we are happy to finance their way back to their families, back to their friends, back to their native country. And we're happy to bring them back to you where they are safe, because refugee camps is not the environment where people are very safe. And Belarus, as we saw from the unfortunate incident with, if this is confirmed, of Iraqi citizens who died, is also not a safe place.
Mr. Mantas Adomenas, thank you very much for joining us from Belarusia. From Lithuania. Thank you very much for joining us from Lithuania.